And so we will welcome you to this program. We have a number of parent leaders who have been involved, and we appreciate their participation. And I will remind the candidates, as we did at the top of the show, it's about education tonight, not only educating our children and also educating the general public about who the candidates are, but it's also about educating the candidates. And this is the statement from the parent leaders: to improve education in the Bronx and begin creating the type of synergy around education in the borough that could uplift us all in the name of diversity, inclusion, equity, and excellence. So we had the 16 candidates, half appeared in our first hour, and here are the candidates who will appear in the second hour of this program. Running in Council District 8, it is Tamika Mapp. Thank you, Ms. Mapp, for joining us. Running in District 11, it is Abigail Martin and Mino Laura. Thank both of you for joining us. In District 13, it is Marjorie Velasquez. And in District 14 is Fernando Aquino, and Troy Blackwell is in Council District 15. So candidates, we will rotate the order through the program. Each candidate will have 1 minute each to respond to each question, and you'll receive an audio warning at 30 and 15. And then, of course, when time is up, we'll let you know that as well. We will allow you a closing statement, and that will be a 60-second closing statement. And a reminder, as it was in our first half hour, all questions used in the programs have been submitted by parent leaders. So let's get our order set, and we'll start off. We're going to go district by district and within each district alphabetically. So let's start off in District 8. It is Tamika Mapp. Nice to have you with us, Ms. Mapp. You can unmute yourself and be ready.
Thank you for having me.
There you go. Great. Let's start and talk about infrastructure. To put it bluntly, class sizes are too big, especially now when children need as much individual, academic, and emotional care as possible. There are existing abandoned buildings that can be converted to school space, and also, of course, a great desire in many Bronx communities for new school facilities that really never get built. Also, there's a great need for repairing, updating, and modernizing the existing ones with new furniture, Wi-Fi capacity, electrical capacity, AC, and ventilation improvements, which are vitally important in this day and age, especially. As an example, we were presented with the idea of a scaffolding at the Morris campus in Council District 16 has been there for decades, and the repairs have still not been made. So if you are elected to this city council, how would you address these kinds of issues? And that's to you, Ms. Mapp.
Okay, so the first one I will do to address the issues is work with the borough president to see why these issues haven't been done. And then once these agencies come to the city council for the hearing, I'll be asking questions, asking why is it taking so long? But we also need to make sure that when we look at school contracting, that we give our opportunities to MWBE contractors, because majority of them know the existence of the school structure. And then we need to really look at how we're doing class sizes
30 seconds.
by removing co-location schools within the district as well. And I believe when a co-location school come into play, they have the responsibility to actually upgrade the school as long as they're upgrading their things.
15.
So, you know, it's twofold. One, need accountability, and then two, when charter schools or any kind of school comes into our schools, they need to be able to use their funds to upgrade the whole school and not just a section of their school.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Council District 11. One of the candidates running there is Mino Laura. Ms. Laura.
Thank you so much, Gary, and thank you to the parents for starting this forum. Yes, I agree with how you started that question, Gary. Classroom sizes are too big. We need to make sure to downsize classrooms. We need to make sure to build more schools. Right here in District 11, we need more schools. We need more middle schools. And I don't believe in austerity budgets. We need to be investing in infrastructure. Our children deserve nothing less. the top of the quality schools, top of the quality education, and that includes the buildings.
30
When it
seconds.
comes to making sure that we're keeping accountable when it comes to construction, making sure as city council member, I will be putting pressure on the school construction authority, on, as my colleague said, Ms. Mapp, on the borough president, understanding the data of the why and making sure that we're working together, coalitions among other agencies with the DOE, using the
15.
capital funds that are not operating budget, it's different budget, to make sure that that happens and it's prioritized in construction for the city when it comes to education.
Thank you. Let's go to you, Ms. Martin, also running in the 11th Council District.
Gotta make sure to unmute myself there. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Gary. I agree also with this question. We need to make sure that our schools have all of the infrastructure, the classrooms, the space that is needed. You know, as per the release of the new budget, the schools are going to be fully funded for the first time, and it's very exciting. But as city council members, we need to make sure that the funding is going to be used in the best way. And schools that need infrastructure updates should be prioritized. I think we need to create a baseline of infrastructure, and every single school will be given that baseline and they can decide what they need to do. They can make the decisions for themselves. We need to include parents in this decision as well. We also need more transparent funding. We need to know how the funding is going to be used and the reasoning behind that. And when we're talking about development, when we're increasing density in neighborhoods, schools need to be built along that with the increased density. And if developers are not, and if there is not enough space in the schools, then developers should have to pay a fee towards it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Velasquez.
Hi, thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone. This is a meaningful conversation. When we're coming through to our communities, we need to make sure that we're looking at the holistic picture, that we're looking when developments come in, just like Abigail just stated, that we're holding developers accountable, that we're holding everyone accountable, that when we're talking about infrastructure, we're looking at what our windows look like. When we're talking about looking at lead in our water for our students, taking a real good look right now, this is our opportunity to hold the administration accountable. When we're looking at fully funded schools, then making sure that the money goes back to where it belongs. It's building our schools from the ground up and looking beyond the four walls and seeing that our families deserve the best. And it is literally going in through that, making sure that our cafeterias have
15.
appropriate ACs, that our students have smaller class sizes, and that we're using our money appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Velasquez. Let's go to you, Mr. Aquino, running in the 14th Council District. Mr. Aquino.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for making me part of this forum. I completely agree with the statement posed by this question, and I believe it is just another statement of the inequality that the Bronx has been suffering for decades, and it is a matter of money. Now that we have the state passing the foundation aid for schools, and that we know that federal money is coming to the city and the state, we need to make sure, I think the city council has a responsibility to make sure that this money gets to our communities.
30 seconds.
That we can use this money to invest in all those points that are reflected in this question. And I am committed when I go to the city council to work to just do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Blackwell, you have 60 seconds for this.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you to the parents for organizing this tonight. Starting off with infrastructure, I just want to lead by saying that the DOE is the second largest funded agency in the city, only second to the NYPD, $30 billion. I believe that at the very least, 50 million needs to go to infrastructure. This is for the lead, the mold. This is also including broadband. I think second, we need to look at the procurement and bidding process. As I believe one of my colleagues mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that minority and women-owned businesses are being able to get bids for the Department of Education. And last but not least, the city uses ePassport, which is a portal for capital projects. That needs to be updated so contracts can move faster and capital projects can be funded much faster. So for me, that's how I'm viewing infrastructure.
Thank you. I think we've gotten to all the candidates who are present. So let's move on to our second question, and that will go to you, Ms. Laura. Unfortunately, Bronx students and their families have been disproportionately affected by trauma from so many sources, and even more so during the pandemic. The DOE has initiated family and community wellness collectives to address the trauma Bronx children and their families have gone through, especially in underserved communities. There's a great need for healing spaces and resources as well for all the children, and support for their families, especially in those places where trauma was often pervasive even before the pandemic. So as a city council member, how would you address these kinds of issues?
As we come back, it is so essential that we are centering the health and well-being of our students and not lose the opportunity or not just focus on the academic gap. This is an important question, and the way that I would tackle it as council member right here in District 11, but across this, the city, we need to fully fund our schools. We have an opportunity to do that again, and grateful for the state funding that has been owed to us. We need to hire more social workers. We need to make sure that every arts elective and social emotional programs and restorative justice programs, peer mediation is funded and available to every single student and not dependent on PTA having to raise money for these kinds of electives that will nurture and create space for the students to be able to have one-on-ones, small circles, and classes that address this.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, also running in the 11th Council District.
Thank you. I'm a social worker. I have been working in trauma for almost 20 years, and I understand the dire need that we have here to address the trauma that our families have endured through the pandemic crisis. And I recognize that if you don't address this trauma, that down the road it becomes very costly. You're more likely to have a substance abuse issue, cancer, heart problems, all sorts of issues if you have unresolved trauma from your childhood. So we need to do this. We need to have more social workers in school. It's absolutely ridiculous that there is one social worker for every 716 students, and there's one school safety officer for every 292 students. That ratio makes no sense. We need to focus. I agree with what Ms. Laura said about focusing on the social emotional learning. It needs to be a part of the curriculum, but we need more social workers in school, and we cannot let this be ignored. We have to address the trauma of not only our children in schools and our families, but also our essential workers and the rest of New York City, really.
Thank you. Ms. Velasquez, you get the next chance to answer this question.
COVID's been devastating on our communities, where we're talking about the implications, what our children have had to deal with in the last year. We've asked so much from them, and now it's us. We need to step it up for all of us, right? Not just our children, but our families. And this is why community-based schools are important for our communities. And it is also asking for H&H to team up with our schools, right? So that we're not wasting our budgets that are intended for infrastructure, for books, for our students in that way. Let's team up with the agency, H&H, to make sure that our children have the access to the therapists that they need, and that we're looking at fully taking care of our family in a holistic way, making sure that we're having contact one-to-one. Our social workers, making sure that they not only have food at their house, but that we're having honest discussions on how we build up together as families, because that's where it stands, right? Our foundations are our families. Our students deserve the best, and it belongs to us to take this lead. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Aquino, your opportunity to answer this question.
Mental health is an epidemic in New York City, and it emerges in a lot of different ways in different sectors, where it's nowhere more prevalent and dramatic than in our schools. My two kids are, one of them is working as a social work program, and the other is a para-professional school, and they often dealing with this harsh realities. We need to invest more in the care in school. We need to create a health system in schools, and it's about investment. And if we don't invest in the school, then we end up investing in other things that are harmful to the community, like, for example, having the police dealing with mental health issues as an encounter with people on the streets, which could be prevented if we invest more in schools for mental health.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I want to start off also with this question by thinking of the children in that situation, right? When we talk about trauma, so many of our students in the public school system are going home, not sure if they're going to have food on the table for dinner. Some of them are experiencing gun violence. They're living in extreme levels of poverty, but then they're expected to show up at school and be their best selves, and they can't possibly be. So for me, I think this is one, ending the school to prison pipeline. We need to stop criminalizing lower socioeconomic students for their poverty. We need to invest in more social workers.
30
Specifically
seconds.
in my district, in District 15, over a quarter of the students are facing homelessness, which is extremely severe. So we need to fund our youth drop-in centers. We only have one in the Bronx, borough-wide, specifically as a youth drop-in center. And I also think
15 seconds.
Thank you. And I think more money needs to go to our school-based health centers, which provide free care to our students, regardless if they have insurance or what their immigration status is. That's going to be really helpful for trauma.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp, you get the final word on this question.
Thank you. Some of our children are born into trauma. So we've been having trauma ever since before this pandemic. And we really need to make sure that when we employed our social workers, that they already understand our needs of our community. Not a social worker who took a class in trauma, but a social worker who actually dealt through the trauma of knowing what it's like not to have a food on the table, what it's like to have being the only person in your house that had to take care of your brothers and sister. Until you really understand the issues that our children are having, you really can't solve the problem. And since it's Mental Health Awareness Month this month, and I like to start it off and saying that every social worker in our communities needs to reflect the students in our communities, making sure that they have trauma-based experience to deal with our children, and making sure that we employ our youth and our middle school
15.
students and our high school students, because another peer can relate to another child based on another adult. So we need to look at the holistic way, from children in elementary school, social workers, middle school peer advocates, high school peer advocates with a social worker intervening.
Thank you. Let's go to our next question, and the first respondent will be you, Ms. Martin. Let's talk about language access. There has been a real problem of inclusion in Bronx schools. Parents of differing languages and cultural barriers have had difficulty communicating with the school system, so they become disengaged and ultimately their children suffer. How can you help address this if you are a city council member and bring additional resources into the school to supplement the funding that comes out of the state of New York?
Am I unmuted? Let me check. Yep. Okay.
There you go.
So the first thing I think we should do is require the Department of Education to publish an annual progress report on the corrective action plan for multilingual workers. The school is in trouble because the DOE is in trouble because we haven't been serving our multilingual learners. They have a corrective action plan. They got an extension. We need to know what's going on with that. The next thing we could do is we need to create a pipeline for multilingual teachers, and we need to hire from the community, hire staff that speaks the languages reflected in the community. And we also have to be inclusive of parents who are working off hours, immigrant parents who need support with the digital divide, with technology, and a multitude of ways. So I think there's a multi-pronged approach to address this issue, but let's start with getting an update on what's happening with the corrective action plan.
Thank you. Ms. Velasquez.
Doesn't Mino go before me because she's in the same district as Abigail?
No, we're just going, in an order. If she got to answer first before, then she'll answer this last. I do appreciate you being so fair.
No, I just want to be fair. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, we're following very closely. Yeah, it's a little complicated because we could keep the districts together, but when we do the questions, we're just going in an order for each individual. Thanks for pointing it out, though. Okay,
just want to make sure. So thank you. We have census data that's not even a year old. We need to start there as our basis point. There are different parts of my community where we either have Albanian as a first language, Spanish as a first language, or even French as a first language. And so we really need to start there. Look at the census data. I agree with Abigail that we really just start holding folks accountable, having a review every single year of where we're going. How can we be more inclusive? Making sure that our families know that we're there. Look, I worked hand in hand with the
30
census
seconds.
group, and it was literally reaching out to the different community groups that do build up our community. They're made up of parents, grandparents, sisters, aunts, uncles. We're all in this together. Doesn't matter. We all know that there is a real failure when it comes to
15
accessing our
seconds.
communities in a different language, and we need to start in not only having phone calls, persons, but making sure that the staff accurately reflects our communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you for being so fair-minded. We appreciate it. Let's say to Mr. Aquino, it's your turn to respond to this question.
Multilingualism is an asset, and we treat it like a burden. More than half of the Bronx are Latinos. We have the resources right here in the city, and we should be investing more in educating our population so they can be part of a global city, which is New York City. I mean, that's how we advertise it to the world, but we are not investing. We are basically neglecting the city by not investing enough in educating the children and communicating with their parents. So the city council needs to do a better
30
job,
seconds.
in making and holding these agencies, the education department, accountable for addressing the new normal, which is the
15.
new city that we have, which is a global city, which in effect is a diverse city, which is also an asset.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell, your turn.
Yeah, this makes me think about my Puerto Rican grandmother who could not really access the education system because her English was not good. I think for starters, we need to invest back in the New York City Language Access Fund, which provides funds to nonprofits working in the education system so that they can hire those who are culturally competent and speak the language. I also think we need to look at programs where we hire those who do not reflect the community, such as Teach for America and City Year, where they'll hire someone from out of state who will be in a low-income school, specifically here in the Bronx or in other
30
boroughs,
seconds.
and they're there for a year and leave, and they have no language skills relating to the students. I think we need to look there. And I also think each school should do a language access plan where the principal and superintendent report on, so we know what they are doing and we can track
50.
the data for that for their parents.
Thank you. Let's go around to Tamika Mapp. Ms. Mapp?
I think as a city council member, we need to start with us. Language access begins in our office. When a constituent calls our office, they should be able to get somebody that speaks their language. Was a PTA president, and all I did or heard inside the school being the PTA is what parent can speak English or what parent can speak Spanish. That needs to stop, because even though our IEPs are in Spanish or the language of their choices, when they actually get into the meeting, it's not in the language of their choice. And we need to make sure that we have professional translators that's in the educational space so they can actually do their
30
job
seconds.
and help the people understand what their IEP looks like. And it needs to stop not just for IEP meetings. We need to make sure they're at PTA meetings. They need to be at after school activities. They need to be in social work in communities. Whatever they interacting with their child,
15.
their language of their choice should be present and foremost.
Thank you. And the final word on this question is for you, Ms. Laura.
Thank you. So as an English language learner myself, and as someone who has dedicated my life to working with English language learners and immigrant students in the city, I know the dire need and the gap. And I think as we think about this issue, we need to look at it as how are we reaching the families? Parent coordinators are some of the most essential workers in the school building. So we need to be looking at data, but also working with them. As city council member, I will do the work that I've done with my nonprofit, working with coalitions. I serve on the Leadership Council for Immigration Coalition, and I agree with my colleague Troy about we need to expand the language access program. We need to make sure that as we're bringing languages, in addition to translators, that yes, we also need to hire locally and make sure that we're being accountable, culturally responsive to our students and their families so that they're able to advocate for themselves and what they need.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question. And Ms. Velasquez, you will get the first chance to respond to this. The pandemic has shed light on a digital divide that has had a disproportionately negative impact on students and families in the Bronx. Many have been at a decided disadvantage when it comes to remote learning. How can we ensure that each school and each home is technologically rich and each child has a device and broadband access. So there is finally equitability in educational access and opportunity.
Look, this fight is not new to me. I stood firm with many of the members here tonight, demanding better technology for our students, actually any technology at that point, and also Wi-Fi. When we're talking about what our future looks like, it's building up, right? I am grateful for our partnership with the borough president and how he was able to deliver tablets, much needed tablets to our community, to our district. And it is doing that, right? It is working with local electeds, with our local partners, making sure that our students have the best resources as possible. And when we're talking about this digital divide and prepping for our future, our students should have the best devices, period. It should be renewed every 4 to 2 years, 2 to 4 years, excuse me, because our kids have to have the best technology, the best resource, because if they are the best, we have to make them know that they are the best and invest in them. That's why I was proud to stand with the members of this group and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Aquino, let's talk about that digital divide.
Digital divide is another indication of that the COVID-19 pandemic has just exacerbated or revealed preconditions of inequality in the Bronx, in which 37% of Bronxites don't have access to internet. We need to do a better job in investing in bridging that gap. We can partner with small startup companies that has been done in other counties, like in Brooklyn. We can partner with faith organization and bring that signal and give every child their device they need in school and at home so they can success in school.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell, let's talk about that digital divide.
Yeah, let's start off with that 38% of the Bronx doesn't have home internet, and that's probably growing, especially in this crisis. I think with this, at least 50 million from the budget specifically for the Department of Education that's going towards infrastructure should include broadband. I think that another 50 million should be included in the budget for NYCHA. So that's where some of our most vulnerable students live, that they can get a free municipal broadband there. And I think also each of the council members have the opportunity to implement participatory budgeting project. This is an easy to open it up to all constituents, regardless of immigration status.
I think your audio, Mr. Blackwell, I think your audio went off there for a moment. We'll give you another 15 seconds there. Or maybe, ironically, the digital divide has struck our forum here.
Did I freeze?
I think it did, yeah. So just the last 15 seconds or so of what you were saying, we certainly want to give you the opportunity to finish up.
See, this is why we need municipal.
You proved your point.
I proved my point, Gary. I was saying we can use participatory budgeting, open it to allow constituents to do projects, things like The Point, which is a municipal broadband provider right here in the Bronx. Discretionary funds.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Mapp, let's hope that the digital divide doesn't keep striking us for at least for our forum. Let's get through.
I know,
Ms. Mapp,
right?
go ahead.
I agree. We have the money to provide free broadband internet and make it a public utility. We just need to look inside the NYPD's budget. The money is there. And it goes back to prioritizing, looking at the budget and see what's important. The budget that you represent as a city council member is like your moral compass. So you need to, like me, I'm going to be fighting for everything in my means to make sure that my district has free access. And we shouldn't have to be picking and choosing who gets that access. Everybody should get that access. You know, the governor did $15. That's a great step, but we can do better than $15 per family who's underserved by making it a public utility. Remember, we was all on AOL and we had to dial up and we had to pay a fee. And then all of a sudden we got internet. Internet shouldn't be a luxury. It should be just mandatory. That's how we do business now. We do everything on the internet and everybody should have access.
Thank you. Ms. Laura?
Yes, I we need universal broadband access. And as we work towards that, we need to prioritize the communities that right now we know don't have it, right? Our marginalized communities, we need to prioritize NYCHA buildings, because this needs to be, I agree with Ms. Mapp, just a utility that is needed, and should be free, just included. As we work towards that, we need to subsidize. So it's great. Yes, the $15, that's a path. I'm proud to be endorsed by CWA, the union that is working through telecommunications, who will be helping to do this and has been pushing to make this a reality. My daughter goes to a Title I school, and one of the things when we talk about digital divide is also the technology. We got technology, and families get technology, but they don't have a hotspot, or they don't work, right? We need to make sure to expand grants for schools
15.
so that they're able to identify who needs them and give it to them now, not tomorrow, today.
Thank you very much. And let's move on for the final word on this question to Abigail Martin.
Oh,
Did I miss
sorry.
somebody?
No, you didn't. I thought you were going on to the next one. That's my
No,
fault.
no,
I
no, no. We
apologize.
got you. Your name is right here on my list.
Okay, we absolutely need universal and free broadband in New York City, and we need to have internet that is available in all spaces where children live and learn. It is not optional, it is completely essential. We also need to have one-to-one with technology. You can't give a family one device when they have 4 kids and expect all 4 kids to show up to class. We don't know what the fall is going to look like. I think we may end up having a 100% in-school option and a 100% Zoom school option. For those 100%, we need to have the infrastructure to help the parents get their kids set up. When I was getting my kids set up, they started off 100% Zoom. There were like 70 different passwords. It was completely confusing.
15
And
seconds.
I'm not a multi-language learner. You know, we need to be able to support our families so that they can support their kids, especially for those populations that are going to choose Zoom school for whatever reason that they need to choose it.
Thank you. For the next question, Mr. Aquino, you will be the first respondent. Let's talk about school co-locations, mergers, and closures. They are very problematic in the borough of the Bronx, partly because the timelines for changes in school utilization happen in compressed timelines with little or no input from parents. As a result, school communities are left to develop plans on their own without community input. Can you commit to making sure that all of the co-locations and all of the decisions that are made are inclusive of all parents and community members so that their voices in governance can have real meaning?
Absolutely. I believe that the outcome of an individual's education have a lot to do with their parents, even if it's just their parents wish for them to be educated. But it's even better if their parents can have a voice in the programs that are going to impact their kids. So one of the things that's missing for that equation here in school power is the parents. So we need to do more to empower the parents in our schools. And if we do that, I guarantee that we're going to have a better
30
outcome of
seconds.
children's education. So I am fully committed to fighting, voting, advocating for more parent involvement in school governance.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell?
Just making sure I can unmute.
There you go.
On shared governance, I think we need to empower our education councils and our PEPs. For me, if elected as a council member, I want to have open town halls with my constituents. That includes the parents. I want them to be able to address these education concerns with me directly. Also, I think we need to bring all the stakeholders to the table in this shared governance. That includes on school planning. We need our building councils, our shared space committees, and other leaders so we can come to a compromise on this governance plan.
Thank you. Let's go to Tamika Mapp from the 8th Council District. Ms. Mapp?
You know, going back to the whole thing, I really think we need to go back to being a school board where it was center with the parents and the CEC making the decisions as a school board. And if we can't go back to being a school board per thing, we need to make sure that the mayor have a nomination power. He shouldn't have the full authority to dictate who sits on the Department of Education. It should be approved by the city council as a whole. Like I said in the beginning, if you want to co-locate in the school, share your resources. Obviously, you have the resources that we need
30
because you can
seconds.
do your old floor all over. So why don't you share that resources with the other school? Why don't the principals talk to each other so they can share the resources? Our kids kind of like, my daughter goes to a co-located school. One school have good lunches, the other school have crappy lunches. One goes
15
outside,
seconds.
one come outside. We need to be all together because that's how children learn. One school needs to be talking to over and sharing resources to make sure our kids have a better education.
Thank you. Let's go to the 11th Council District. Ms. Laura, Mino Laura.
Yes, we need to, I agree that we absolutely need to be empowering the PEP and the CEC. They can't just be just a show of they say recommendations and nothing happens. Not only when it comes to contracts, which that is very important, and that's a lot of power that they do hold right now, and what contracts we hold as a city, they need to be ones that are accountable to our community. When it comes to co-location, that hurts parents, that hurts students, that hurts teachers. Some kids are having lunch period at 8:30 and 9 a.m. in the morning because that's the only time they can get to the cafeteria. So I absolutely think we need to, I believe in small schools, but that can't be at the expense of actually educating our children how we have to and being responsible with how the access to spaces. So yes, in the meantime, how are we working and bridging and working together? But we need to figure out a way out of co-locations if there's not enough auditoriums, not enough cafeterias and classrooms.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you. Oh, am I unmuted?
You're all set.
Okay, sorry. So I support including parents in school governance whenever possible. We need to elevate parents' voices and include them whenever we can. I am against the co-locating of schools. It's a waste of resources. Again, what Ms. Laura said about having lunch at 8:30 in the morning, it doesn't make sense. It does hurt our parents and it does hurt our kids. And I fully support allowing the city council checks and balances over the DOE for policies like this. Why was this allowed to happen in the first place? It's something that doesn't make sense. All too often the DOE does things that don't necessarily make sense. And we need to have somebody else in there, especially parents and also students at the table asking these questions, and so that we can streamline and make education and just make it more streamlined for everybody. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Marjorie Velasquez from the 13th Council District, you get the final word on this question.
Hi. So first of all, for me, this is my opportunity to say that this is the moment that we have to listen to our parents, right? They are the first step into our children's education. They are the beginning, right? When we're discussing what goes on in our schools, they are there for their children all the way. And so when we're saying it should not even be a question about how we govern our schools, having folks in PEPs and Cs should be a priority, should reflect not only our communities, our schools as well. We need input from our parents, from our educators, from our administrators. And that's the steps that we need to take. When we're looking at co-locations, we're confusing so many of our resources. We're looking and creating so many divisions by giving one floor access to everything or none. That's where we need to be better. And it starts by listening to our parents who are here today. And thank you for that opportunity to voice your opinions. And I'm here to listen.
Thank you. All right, let's go to, this will be our final question. And then right after that, we'll do closing statements from each of the candidates. And so the first respondent in this case will be you, Mr. Blackwell from the 15th Council District. Because of the pandemic, we're entering a new era in our schools. Bronx schools, and especially schools in underserved communities across the city, require a new model of education, which the services for special ed are prompt, the needs of children in shelters are addressed, supports and academic enrichment are provided in every school, curriculums are revamped to include culturally responsive texts, music, the arts, sports, career and technical education, and inclusion initiatives along the lines of race, gender, and ethnicity. One initiative that's tonight's organizing parents like is the exploration of urban agriculture and programs such as FISH, Food Innovation, Sustainability, and Health, in partnership with the Office of the Executive Superintendent, Bronx Community-Based Organizations, and the City and State University of New York. So how do you see the process of developing a comprehensive model of education in the Bronx that uplifts students, families, and ultimately the whole borough? Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Gary. What a powerful question to kind of end this all out on. I think going back to what you said in the original statement about bringing all of these stakeholders together so that it is culturally competent, we are focusing on racial justice. That's exactly how it should be. In terms of how I proceed with this, I think it could be in the form of one, and again, empowering our education councils. It can be in the form of an education task force. I'm someone who does want to sit on the education committee in the council, so this would be extremely important to me. In the same way we are looking at urban agriculture, I think we need to look at plans like tech for social good. We need to look at art for social justice. That's part of the healing process for those with trauma. So for me, again, it's looking at that budget that's going to the Department of Education and that budget where we can allocate funds to make this all possible.
Thank you. And I think it sounds like there's a school child somewhere in the background there. So that is my perfectly appropriate.
Yeah.
Let's go to, I think we can all appreciate the sound of a child in this particular forum. Let's talk to Tamika Mapp. Oh, you got to unmute there, Ms. Mapp.
Okay, so the first one is getting everybody together and listening, like Mr. Blackwell said, getting our group of parents together, getting our principals together, getting community-based organizations together. We need an overhaul. We need to make sure we have financial literacy classes inside of our schools. We need to make sure we have civic engagement classes inside of our schools. We need to make sure that if a kid only can express their emotions through art, we need to make sure art is in our classes. We also need to make sure that our children know how to know where their food is grown from and having that access as well. There's so many stuff that we can do if we just look at other people's budget to make this happen. And I'm so happy, when I get elected, to sit on the education committee to bring these things in the forefront. We miss the sex education, civic engagement, all the stuff that we used to have in our side of our schools, we no longer have, and it's time to bring that back.
Thank you. Ms. Laura.
Yes, schools are not a place, we shouldn't be educating our kids how to take a test. Schools are a place where we're educating civic leaders and compassionate and creative, collaborative adults. That's what education is about. We do that by making sure we have culturally responsive and sustaining education. And how do we do that? Making sure that our staff is reflecting our student population. Building a pipeline, making CUNY free will be one step towards making that. Hiring local will be another. Making sure we have social emotional programs, making sure that we have the ability in the classes so that every children, because all children are gifted and talented, are able to and engage in the arts or in the technology and STEM courses to be able to meet the needs. And community schools as well. As we're nurturing our students, we need to be nurturing our families for them to be empowered to say what needs to be happening, what are the resources that are needed, not just during the school day, but after school, expanding the school day till 6 for everybody who needs it with enrichment programs.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you. I think the Department of Education does need a complete overhaul, and we need to rebuild. And when we rebuild, we need to include the parents, we need to include the students, we need to include all of the stakeholders and create a new model that addresses all of the things that aren't happening right now. We need to make sure that our multilingual learners are supported, that our exceptional learners are getting the services that they need. Everybody needs to be at the table in this, and we can do this if we do it together. We just need to have the political will. I fully support improving schools' cafeteria culture. We were talking about fish. We need to direct capital funds toward cafeteria upgrades and ensuring more students have more time to eat. We need to increase city funding for schools and community-based organizations by providing high-quality food and nutrition in education. And I think we can do this if we, again, have the political will to do so.
Marjorie Velasquez, your response to this question.
It's tough. It's tough on our communities, what we've seen, but what we've really seen out of this pandemic and how we've gotten through most of this is through partnership. It's being collaborative partners together in this. And it's understanding that this process is not one easy thing. It's going to take time, but it's going to take resources, and it's going to take community involvement. When OLA in my district shut down, first thing we did as a community board was reach out to DOE and say, look, this is a possible site that we can take and actually use for our schools as we're expanding.
30 seconds.
What happened was a charter came in and decided to take over But you know what? At the end of the day, our kids are still needing access to better food, better technology, better
15
arts,
seconds.
right? Working with parents, working with educators, working with administrators, and that we're all developing curriculum together, and that we're looking in budgets at each and every school, and that reflects what the needs are for each and every school with each and every parent in mind.
Time. Thank you. And the final respondent to the final question is you, Mr. Aquino.
Thank you, Gary. As an educator, I always tell my students at Lehman College that education is supposed to help you live better. And I think we need to build upon that partnership with the community. I believe in universal after school and weekend programs. Programs like FISH should be part of the curriculum because we need to teach our kids how to reduce the global warming, for example, how to do agriculture in a better way, how
30
to
seconds.
learn about nutrition, those kind of things, because that's what education is all about. It's not just to learn about history and science, it's also about learning how to live a better life. And I think our city needs to do a better job, and that is going to be done in a partnership with the community.
15.
Together we can do it.
Thank you. All right, candidates, we have come to the time where we are going to do closing statements. And so just before we get to that, I do want to thank Tamika Mapp from Council District 8, Mino Laura and Abigail Martin from Council Districts 11, Marjorie Velasquez from Council District 13, Fernando Aquino from Council District 14, and Troy Blackwell from Council District 15 for participating in this forum. We will give each of you 60 seconds to deliver a closing statement, and we'll do that in our original order, and that will mean, Tamika Mapp, you get the first closing statement.
Thank you so much, parents, Bronx parent leaders, advocacy, and everybody who's listening to this call. I learned so much by just listening in between with where I go. And as you can see, education, we need a whole bunch of work to do with that. And a part of my job as a city council member is pretty much 95% is listening, 5% is actually doing the things that you want me to do. So if you want to learn more about me, please go to my website, map.vote. It would be my honor to have your vote, and together we can move policy. I'm not perfect. I don't make promises, but one promises I can do is that I will listen to each and everybody's voice, and together we can get things done.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of your campaign. Mino Laura in the 11th Council District, it is your chance for a final statement.
Thank you so much for this forum, and thank you parent advocates and leaders for making this happen and for your work every single day. We are living through one of the most difficult moments in our history, and I believe that education is the most important investment we make as a society, and one that will help lift us up and out of this pandemic into our recovery. I'm an immigrant who built $1 million organization from scratch, and as an educator, I have kept my programs running and my staff employed during this pandemic. I know what it takes to do the impossible. It doesn't scare me that we're in this place or the big issues that it'll take to solve the problems with the DOE. This is our chance to solve racial, economic, and environmental injustice, and we can do that together in coalition. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Working Families Party, Senator Alessandra Biaggi, Senator Gustavo Rivera, because they believe that I am the candidate who will stand up for justice for all. My work has been about empowering youth and families, and that is exactly how I will continue building and co-governing with all of you when I'm city council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Abigail Martin from the 11th Council District.
I'd like to close by thanking the teachers, the school administrators, guidance counselors, social workers, and parent advocates who have almost made it through the most difficult year you have ever had. You all deserve more resources, better support, and that's why I'm running for city council, in part so I can make that happen. I too want to be on the education committee. Education is one of the most powerful tools for change that we have in New York City, and we are getting it wrong. We are failing the next generation, and that has to stop. New York City should be the world leader for public education, not one of the most segregated school systems in the country where 40% of the kids who need, 40% of the exceptional learners who need services aren't getting what they need. I'm proud to be endorsed as the #1 ranked candidate by the New York City Kids
15
PAC, and I'm a proud public school parent. I'm also a social worker and an educator, and as your city council member, I will fight for changing the governance of the DOE to increase transparency and accountability, ensuring the DOE complies with the contract for excellence, and fight for digital equity and so
Time.
much more. Please check out my website at
Thank you.
abigailforthebronx.com.
Thank you very much. Ms. Velasquez, your final statement. You're in the 13th Council District.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to listen and to share ideas as to how we build up our education. Growing up, I kept on hearing our children are our future, right? Well, the future is now. We need to invest in our communities. We need to invest in our schools in a fully holistic approach, right? It involves parents, it involves educators, it involves administrators, and it involves us holding DOE accountable. We have to let them know that at the end of the day, it is our children that they are ultimately responsible for, that every dollar spent should be built on our children, that we are giving access to our children to be the future leaders that they are destined to become. So thank you for the opportunity today, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Aquino. Your final statement, sir.
Yes, I believe in education as the best path to success, and I think I'm an example of that. I come from a rural area in the Dominican Republic, and now I'm part of a family which are all educators, including my wife, which is a Bronx Community College teacher. I also believe that our government have failed. That the promise that we have in education today are products of policies that led to this inequality that we have today. And when I go to the city council, I plan to be part of the education committee. I will pursue that, and I will advocate to level the playing field so our kids can get a fair chance to an education to serve this global city, which is New York City. We deserve better.
Thank you. And the final word for the entire program will be delivered by Troy Blackwell in the 15th Council District. Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Gary. I want to close out by saying that I'm running for office because I'm guided by my faith, and my faith tells me to fight for the most vulnerable among us. I'm a product of Title I public schools. I grew up in NYCHA. I'm the child of an incarcerated parent. These issues that we talked about tonight are personal for me. That's part of the reason why I'm running. You know, my plan is to desegregate New York City public schools. I want to close that digital divide. I want to get our students the resources that they need. As I mentioned in my speech a little bit.
30 seconds.
Over a quarter of the students in my district are homeless. That is a moral issue, and it's a moral obligation to fix it. If anyone is committed to helping, you can help me build back the Bronx, build back District 15. You can go to troyforthebronx.com, and I'm open to talking to everyone and anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's thank our candidates for this evening. Everybody can give them a round of applause. Tamika Mapp, running in Council District 8. Mino Laura and Abigail Martin, running in Council District 11. Marjorie Velasquez, running in Council District 13. Fernando Aquino, running in Council District 14. And Troy Blackwell, running in Council District 15. Thank you all so much for joining us. We also want to thank the Bronx Parent Leaders Advocacy Group in collaboration with CECs 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, the New Settlement Parent Action Committee, the African Democratic Club, STEMDUP Institute, and BronxNet Television. We will find out, and you check your favorite social media or favorite media, which I hope is BronxNet Television, to find out when we will be doing another potentially another council education forum. And I will tell you, because I know I'm going to be moderating debates in each one of the council districts on BronxNet Television. So we're going to get it all together, and we'll see you all, I'm sure, very soon. We thank everybody for joining us. Let's all wear our masks and do what we need to do to be safe and distant. And most importantly, let's take care of the Bronx children. They're our future. They're the most important things we've got. So thank you all for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.